This One Belly Wednesday, get used to the new normal. More nosebleeds, more intermenstrual cycle bleeding, and postpartum hemorrhage. What we're going to talk about today in this One Belly Wednesday is a trend that I've noticed here in practice that for a while I just said, hey, pump the brakes and let's just kind of see what happens. That's what happens when you're living in an experiment, ladies and gentlemen, is that you have to just kind of sit back and see what your new normal is going to be if our big decision makers are going to say, hey, listen, everything's a-okay, everything's safe, but you're noticing something different. So those of you who have been reporting things like a change to what your normal periods have been looking like, have had questions for me about, is this related to anything that might be going on environmentally? And is that related to an exposure to somebody else who may have decisions that they have made for their body that you may not have made for yours? Or you may have said, hey, listen, this is the best course of action for me to take. And so I'm going to go along with the idea that this is going to be something I can do to protect myself. But then you have had some other kind of side effects and you've had questions about that. And regardless of what your decision is in this process, you may have just kind of been an observer in this whole process of COVID and wanted to know a little bit more about what was going on with your kids who may be experiencing nosebleeds. It seems that there seems to be a change in how placentas and how platelets, in how several tissues inside the human body are responding and functioning over the last several months. And at first I said, well, you can't really tell anything from a cycle. Today, it doesn't really anything environmentally has impacted this about 3 months ago. So I wanted to wait and be watchful about this stuff. But now I've had my second friend who has gone through postpartum hemorrhage, having had a career of 10 years with having like 1 in 10. And so now I'm starting to look at these trends of children coming into my office with nosebleeds and my own son having a fairly minor fall and then having a massive bruise on his leg out of it. And at this point in time, I really can't just sit back and say, oh, well, who knows? There's definitely something going on. And the next question then is about adaptability. What are you going to do about it? At this point in time, there's no more hand waving and saying, well, let's stop the process, right? At this point in time, it's figuring out how to adapt. And so we got to figure that out. I'm going to give you a tool, a couple of things that we've been figuring out that we've been saying since the beginning of this whole pandemic that are things regularly you should be doing in order to keep your body safe. I'll tell you a little bit of story that's not related to this. I came back from being away in South Carolina to find that one of my tables had a spring that had broken. And we tried all kinds of things to adapt to that spring breaking today in the office. We tried putting some books underneath one of the levers so that the headpiece as it came up would get blocked. And so maybe that was going to be something that we could use to adapt. We even just tried using another ttable and saying, oh, maybe we'll just focus everybody's care on that table, but that really wasn't going to work in a busy office like ours. So there were some things that we tried, and lo and behold, our adaptation, the first time I sat somebody on the opposite end of the table, it made the table tip up a little bit, and then the headpiece came up. And so then my whole little table book adaptation failed. So I had to eventually just go ahead and try to figure out, well, how am I going to deal with this? My solution to this process of having a headpiece that suddenly was dysfunctional was to, instead of thinking about how I could use that headpiece in a different way, I just changed tables. I just decided to swap up my workflow in my office and say, well, maybe the grown-ups, instead of being adjusted on that table, now get adjusted on the table with the headpiece that works. And the babies who I don't use the headpiece for will get adjusted on the table with the dysfunctional headpiece. I had to change inside myself. I had to make a shift with how I behaved and things that I was used to doing over the last 10 years that I've been here in this office, and instead do something a little bit different. That's functionally what we're being asked to do at this point in time, which is start thinking about our nutrition maybe a little bit differently, start thinking about how we take care of our own bodies a little bit differently. Vitamin D has been something that I've been preaching for now well over a year. Vitamin D in 1,000 international units for every 25 pounds of your body weight is one of the things that is a factor in your immune system regulation, and you need to make sure that you're taking plenty of it. Vitamin C is something that those of you who have been following me for a long time know that I've been a huge proponent of good, solid vitamin C supplementation. There's a lot of ways that you can get to it, but in order to get the quantities that you need to be able to supplement in addition to being able to get that through your food sources. You just simply can't get enough vitamin C from your food in order to create a good health and healing response in times of stress or illness. We are the one of 4 species on this planet that doesn't have the enzyme to create its own vitamin C from its food. There's guinea pigs, there's a species of fruit bat, and one other species of bird, but then it's primates. And so primates were supposed to be able to regulate themselves through their food sources. But, let's be honest, our food supply is so depleted at this point in time that supplementation is necessary. So there's a couple different forms that we use in my family. We'll use things like Nordic Naturals has a really nice gummy vitamin C that I give to my son right now as he's going through immune system challenge. There's also vitamin C in terms of like sodium ascorbate. The salt version of it helps absorb in your body a little bit better. Liposomal vitamin C is also super, super useful. That's what I use for myself. If I'm not feeling at my optimum, I'll just supplement with that up to somewhere between 2,000 to 4,000 milligrams on a daily basis. If I'm sick or if I'm having some kind of healing process going on inside my body, I'll try to supplement up to 10 grams. What I'll do is I'll supplement up to the point in time where I hit bowel tolerance, and then I kind of back down by about 500 milligrams and cruise on from there. For my son, I knock that down by 125 milligrams if he starts getting the toots, the vitamin C bowel looseness, so that he can maintain that high level of healing. And vitamin C is a cofactor in blood clotting. It's a formation for collagen cofactor. It's really important in the ability for your body and your cells to repair itself. And so having super adequate vitamin C stores looks like it's just going to be a new normal. The other thing too is vitamin K. They recommend a vitamin K shot at birth in case babies have hemorrhaging internally. There's a very rare condition that they're trying to prevent with that, but you can get vitamin K from juicing leafy greens. So things like kale are super rich in that kind of thing. You don't need a whole lot of it, folks. If you could do that once a week, that should be fine. The reason I told you that story, obviously, is that adaptation is going to be the key. There is no way to avoid the environment at this point in time that you're surrounded by. You have to learn how to be adaptable to it. You can't just live a life of avoidance where you're just going to sit in a bubble and wear a mask all day and say, oh, I'm just going to live in this little bubble, because the fact is we're social beings. The way that the world works is that you have to have interaction with people. That's healthier for your brain, being able to interact with your environment. And so the hope here is that long-term, we haven't caused major problems with our children, major problems with the reproductive system, major problems with our ability to heal ourselves after we've gotten injured. But blood clotting has, since the beginning of COVID, has seemed to have been one of the issues that was causing problems for people who were having lung infections and then strokes because of the blood clots. Now that we have a vaccine that may be helping people, we may have had some side effects that were unintended, and they're currently being studied. So, in the meantime, until those papers get published, until those recommendations get out there into the public, one of the things that we're talking to our patients about is how do you get yourself more adaptable so that you can be more resilient to those outside forces, regardless if this is a thing or not. And so these kinds of things are what we think about, what we study, what we research, what we dive deep into on our One Belly Wednesdays. And so if you have questions, leave them for me in the comments. This is an evolving story. I'm always looking and researching more information. That's what I do in my free time. So if you're looking for a trusted source for someone who knows their way around literature, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook. In fact, on Instagram TV, we have an entire 1-hour postpartum masterclass that I did at the end of the month. So I'm really looking forward to seeing your comments on that. And at the end of this month, something that we're doing is we're diving into fertility on the men's side. It being the Father's Day month, we wanted to focus on fertility for men and what we can do to help promote both sperm count and motility and formation, but also the relationships that really seem to be important, critical, the mental health aspect that seems to be absolutely influential in helping your cells create good, healthy cells so that you can be a healthy person, because as my friend Dr. Marsha Schaefer likes to say, that pregnancy is a byproduct of good health anyway. So look forward to talking to you guys next week. And until then, I hope you all take great care.